everyone. Welcome to A Slice of Life with Kellie and Jon. And today we have a guest who, we've had awesome people, great people, super people, wonderful people, but this guy is just a big deal. And according to Jon, he's also a very nice guy and a talented musician, and he's had a tremendous career, lots of success. Welcome to the podcast, Grant Geissman. We're really lucky to have you. Thank you.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. I am excited I got lots of questions. I looked through your bio, and the thing that grabbed me most, not that all of it didn't really excite me, but the thing that grabbed me most is 2.5 Men. So you wrote their theme song?
So I co-wrote the theme song, and I also, with my writing partner, we did all the music for the show for all 12 seasons.
So wow.
You actually appeared in a couple of episodes.
And I was on camera in a couple episodes as well.
You played the guitar with a
there was one episode where Michael Bolton was singing because the Ashton character was going to be proposing to his fiance. So they're in a restaurant, and as he gets ready to propose, I grab a guitar and turn around and start playing. And of course they had me play the stupid musician that doesn't pay attention. So, at a certain word, I'm supposed to grab the guitar and turn around. He goes, when he says music, I'm supposed to turn around, and I'm the dumb musician and I'm not paying attention. And he has to say it twice. And then I grab the guitar and I go, sorry. So I actually had a line. That was my line. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the good thing. By playing that silly character, you get some more camera time and it's more fun.
It was great. And so I played behind Michael Bolton. I think he sang "When a Man Loves a Woman."
Yes.
And so he was super nice. And it was a really fun episode to do.
Awesome. Yeah, I loved that show. It is so not politically correct, but I think that's what made it so funny is Charlie Sheen's character, and then Ashton Kutcher stepping in, and he's always delightful. So I was excited to read that. So I just had to get that out of the way right away and ask about it.
It was a super fun show to do because, in the Charlie days, he was always writing some jingle, sitting at the piano, singing or doing some crazy thing. And then when Ashton came in...
Who played the piano? When Charlie...
No, he doesn't play at all, but he was, they never showed his hands.
Right.
But
was there very a specific person?
That was usually me. It was either me or my writing partner on the show, Dennis C. Brown. So, and sometimes we could pre-record it, but more often than not, we would be off stage somewhere with a monitor and headphones, kind of like pay no attention to the man behind the curtain kind of thing. And we'd be playing live so we could, interface with the dialogue and stuff like that. So,
right.
So yeah, a lot of that stuff was played live with whoever the singer was. There was another show where I played behind Enrique Iglesias. He played this beautiful, handsome handyman, and all of Charlie's girlfriends, paid no attention to Charlie, and they were all flocking around Enrique. And then he sang a song, and I was playing piano for him as well. So that was fun.
That had to be fun. So were you around the show every week? I mean, you had to be a part of it. Right?
Oh yeah, pretty much every week. And then we would go to Warner's every week for the mix and stuff. But yeah, probably, half the episodes or something like that had some kind of musical ingredient where we'd have to be on the set. So I knew all the guys,
Wow. How fun.
And then, it was an incredible cast, and everyone was very cool. It was, it's the longest job I ever had at once, and probably the best job I ever had.
Oh, wow. And so there were no shenanigans or craziness, Charlie Sheen being crazy on the set or anything like that?
Well, after he had his meltdown, it was not fun. And it turns out that you can't smoke crack cocaine every night for a year and a half and be okay. That's the moral of the story,
Yeah,
that's true.
But before that, I have to say, Charlie was super professional. Like, he almost never forgot his lines or stuff like that. He was like a laser beam. So
such a great talent. I mean, just
very talented guy.
Yeah.
Well,
And
when I get the opportunity, I really love the final 2 episodes of the show. I mean, I just think that was great. Not just the way they dropped the piano first on Charlie, but then they dropped the piano on the producer. I thought
Exactly.
that was fantastic. And the way they wrapped it all up and played to the camera. They
It was
played
hilarious.
the audience that last
Yeah.
couple of episodes. It was great.
Yeah. Great
Because
writing too. I mean, you know,
Well,
it's a,
Yeah, because
you
when
have-
Ashton came in, they said that Charlie had been accidentally killed falling off a subway platform in
Right.
Paris or something. And so in the last two episodes, they revealed, no, he was never killed. He was, kept captive by Rose, who was kind of his stalker on the whole show.
In a house in Tarzana.
Yeah, in a house in Tarzana, in this kind of pit that she made. So it was hilarious.
yeah. Yeah, really clever, all of it. Yeah. So how did you two meet? How do you guys know each other from way back, right?
We were introduced, as you know, I'm a major Beatle fan. And I'm also good friends with Chris Carter, who at the time did the radio show in LA, Breakfast with the Beatles, but now runs the Beatles station on Sirius XM. And so people knew I was a big Beatle fan. And every once in a while, I'd be getting together with Chris Carter and some other Beatle lunatics, and we would play Beatle trivia, Trivial Pursuit, the Beatles edition.
Mhm.
But Chris wouldn't be allowed to play because technically he should know all of it. He's the Alex Trebek of the Beatles. And so we would have Chris be the host and he would ask the questions. And it was great. I have a friend, I shouldn't say had, but have a friend named Patricia Wolf. And Patricia was a longtime friend of Grant. And she was just, John, you have to meet this guy. He is a big Beatle fan.
Mhm.
And so I think I went over to your house one day and just saw your studio and, your collection of everything and said, you have to come in and play with us. And he did. And it was great. You came up the Mulholland House when I had the Mulholland House for a while. And you came up there and we just had a great time. And since then, whenever I was in the area, because I think I moved out of California shortly after that, every time I got the chance to see Grant, I would. Oh, I think I even went to outside of the museum, LACMA.
LACMA, yeah.
LACMA. Yeah,
Yep.
outside the museum. You did a big jazz show there.
Yeah, they have a series of Friday night free jazz concerts, and I've done quite a few of those. And I know you came one time, and so anyway, yeah, I've been around LA. I grew up in San Jose, but I kind of moved down here when I was about 20 to follow my musical pursuits and stuff like that. But
I'm almost afraid to ask because I remember I played Chuck Mangione's "Feel So Good" when I was a DJ at my college radio station. Now that had to be 1977 or so.
could have been 77. We recorded that album in August of 77, and it kind of became a hit in 1978.
Okay,
So-
well, I was still there then. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember playing that and just even before the da-da-da, just that guitar thing that and I didn't know it was you, obviously, at the time. But that guitar thing at the beginning, being a guitar player, just did it for me. It was just so performance-wise, tone-wise, the class of the way it was played just touched me back then. So there you go.
So what's
Yeah,
the story with that? So you wrote it or?
No. I played with Chuck Mangione's band for 4 or 5 years in what most people
Wow.
consider his heyday, his most popular period, which really culminated in this album "Feels So Good," which it's an instrumental tune, but it became a big hit on like top 40 radio in 1978.
Yeah.
And the irony of it is we had we knew we made a great album and it literally felt so good to make the record. But the album version of Feel So Good is 9.5 minutes long.
Wow.
It's got this whole rubato intro that you talked about, which is just me and Chuck. I'm playing like a classical guitar chords, and he's playing the melody very slow. That probably takes a couple minutes on its own just to get through that. And then it's, then the tempo starts and the melody happens and there's solos and whatever. But someone at the record company figured out, okay, if we start here and then we edit to the second part of Grant's guitar solo, we can get the single down to a length that they can play on the radio. And that's what happened. And it became a huge hit. So,
Wow.
And he talks about this guitar solo, which it's an improvised guitar solo, very unusual for the time. And people still talk about this solo, it's influenced a lot of guitar players, kind of turned a lot of guitar players onto a little more jazzy kind of thing. And here we are all these years later and people still talk about it. So it's kind of amazing.
Yeah. See, that's why you're a big deal.
That's right. And when it's great, it's great. It's as simple as that. It will
It's like magic. Once you hit on something artistically, it's just inexplicable.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it's just magic. And you have a lot of magic on your resume. So I'm looking at your resume now, and you've done so much. So you've been nominated for a Grammy as recently as 2022. And what was that for?
It was my album called Blues, which is spelled Blooz, and which looks a lot like this.
Yay.
And
Nice.
amazingly, someone's calling me. We don't want that.
Hello.
Amazingly, we got nominated for a Grammy, which was a great honor because all these years I had never personally been nominated for a Grammy. So very exciting. Yeah.
So
But it's a fun project because I had different guests. Randy Brecker, the famous trumpet player, is on there. So there's one track with me, Joe Bonamassa, and Josh Smith on guitar. There's a track with Robin Ford and I wrote all the tunes, and it was super fun. Tom Scott,
Scott, I was going to ask you about Tom Scott. He is just, when you talk about session horn players, granted, there are a few up there, but Tom Scott is there. If you look at any of the major documentaries, Standing in the Shadows of Motown, Concert for George, and 30 other major concerts, Tom Scott is the sax player primarily.
And then and he's won Grammys on his own. He had his own solo career. And in terms of being a studio musician, it's easier to list people that he didn't play with than the people he did play with, And he's a buddy of mine, and I've played in his band, and he's played on several of my records, and I'm very happy to have him as one of my friends and cohorts.
Wow. Yeah, what a fun industry, because every musician I meet, they're just, you meet other people, you play with each other. In LA, in the rock clubs, they used to do the jam sessions. I don't know if they still do, and play with each other. And I don't know, it just seems like such a fun career. And then you've got the adulation of your fans and awards, and yeah, what a fun life.
So I of course, the first thing one of the first things that I'd ever want to talk to you about is, of course, looking at your resume. But I knew this. I saw Ringo's name on there. What did you do with Ringo?
Ooh.
I played on a Ringo album, the one called Ringo Rama.
Yeah.
One day, there's a musical contractor, in other words, a guy that kind of provides musicians for people for sessions. A guy that I had worked for quite a bit. One day he calls up, he goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" I go, whatever. And he goes, "You want to play on a Ringo album?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir, I do." And he goes, "You play dobro, right?" I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, bring your dobro down to the studio in Santa Monica." And the producer was Mark Hudson when he was working with Ringo.
Right.
And so I'm sure Joe Walsh was unavailable, out of town or something like that. So I got the call somehow, and Ringo wasn't there, so I was just overdubbing. Mark Hudson was there, and he was super nice. And he has this studio that's got all Beatle memorabilia from wall to wall, just, and then they put the track on. And of course, I'm a huge Beatle fan. and I've played along with, probably thousands of hours playing along with Beatle records. So to me, it felt like I was just slipping into a comfortable pair of slippers because I love Ringo's feel. And it was just like, okay, I know this feel. This feels like home, And and then later, though, I got to play live with Ringo on this Klaus Voormann documentary, A Sideman's Journey, I think it was called. And my other musical buddy, Van Dyke Parks, recommended me for that. And so I just went down, and it was Ringo, Jim Keltner, Klaus Voormann, Van Dyke, me, and Joe Walsh played on a couple tunes as well. So it was like, what am I doing here?
Well, let's fill our audience in, even though I'd like to think that a lot of our audience will be people who are going to watch and listen just because of what the content is about you. But let's tell the audience who won't know, who is Van Dyke Parks. So I know,
Yeah, I don't.
but she doesn't.
Okay, Van Dyke is a pianist, composer, vocalist, songwriter, who's probably best known for co-writing songs with Brian Wilson on the kind of legendary Smile album.
Right.
Oh, wow.
That kind of never came out in its original form, but they released it later. But Van Dyke has done his own stuff. He in I think 68, he did this album for Warner Brothers called Song Cycle that was kind of psychedelic and kind of groundbreaking, and another thing that people still talk about. And Van Dyke is a character. He's a great songwriter.
Yeah.
He's a film score composer. He's just a character. To know Van Dyke Parks is to love him.
And then let's also okay. Were you going to ask something?
Yeah, I was going to ask because you scolded me earlier for asking Ringo, star of the Beatles. He's like, of course, there's only one Ringo. So
really, you had to ask if that was the same.
No. I said to her, and he played with Ringo, and she said, Ringo, and I lost it.
Ringo of the Beatles, Ringo Starr.
Yeah.
He's like, you don't. Yeah, there's only one Ringo. So anyway, I got scolded for that.
And then
But now I want to clarify Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys.
Yes, correct.
Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, and just making sure everybody knows. Okay.
So also again for our audience and maybe for Kelly, Klaus Voormann. We all know who Klaus Voormann is. Do you know who he is?
I know who he.
I know you know who he is. Klaus Voormann was originally an early friend of the Beatles when they were in Hamburg, Germany, before they were the famous Beatles. And he was a good friend of the band. Later on, he was asked, because he was somewhat of an avant-garde artist, he was asked to design the album cover for the Revolver cover, the Beatles Revolver cover. And he sneakily put his name on the cover inside, I think, of George's hair, if I'm not mistaken. And
he signed it. Yeah.
And so that was that. And then later on, he became at the concert for Bangladesh in New York City in what was that, 1971, I think it was.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. All of a sudden, Klaus Voormann is on stage as the bass guitarist for George Harrison. And he also wound up playing bass guitar on, I guess, George's album and John Lennon's albums and Ringo's albums.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And he had a career in London as well, because he was a member of Manfred Mann for quite a while.
I didn't know that.
So, yeah, he became a musician, which for a while, that was his main thing. And he did some graphic design. And then in later years, he's kind of stopped playing and went back to more of the graphic design stuff. But he was very important in, the Beatles' development and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and there he is there. And that's who Klaus Voormann is, folks.
Exactly.
Well, okay. These are big deals all hang around with other big deals. So talented, very talented people. And it's you know, a gift, just a gift. I think a lot of people, and obviously a lot of hard work, right, Grant? Am I just
It
not
is
like
a
it's
lot of
just
hard work, but I will
trickling
say that
down?
luck does have something to do with it, you know. You have
Right
to be
place, right
prepared.
time.
You have to be prepared, but you know,
Well, let me ask you, how old were you when you started taking guitar lessons?
I was 11, and I had bugged my parents for like about 6 months after I heard the Beatles, and it's like, I want a guitar, I want a guitar, and I'm sure they figured I would outgrow it and stop asking, but I never did. And so, you know, under the tree that Christmas was my first acoustic guitar, and I signed up for lessons. But the whole reason I wanted to play was because the Beatles thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm not alone in that. I mean, there's
No,
hundreds
Oh,
of
yeah.
thousands of musicians that
Yeah.
will all say the same thing.
Yeah.
So
But then you got to play with Ringo Starr. So how cool is that?
I know that was so weird. And if my 11-year-old self could have looked into the future and seen that, it would have just been like, you know, my head would have exploded off.
Isn't it though? Sometimes we do manifest things. I mean, if you want it badly enough and you work for it, and so I know there's all the pieces, but there's a lot of visualization. You know, just like they say with basketball players. And I don't know if you were visualizing playing with the Beatles ever, but I do think some of our thoughts are so powerful that we're manifesting parts of our life. I don't know. I like to think that.
I have friends that have played with various Beatles, so I was kind of Beatles adjacent, you know. But
Wow.
anyway,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, I had another really big deal that you've worked with was Quincy Jones. How
I
was
did.
that?
I played on a track for one Quincy Jones album. The album was called Q's Juke Joint, and it's, you know, his own kind of solo album. And he had heard me play on, I think, some award show or something. And I had a solo. And so, you know, he called and asked me to play on a track. It was kind of like this bluesy sort of track. And it's funny because I played and he doesn't say too much. So I kind of walked out of there not knowing if he liked it or didn't like it, or if I was going to be on the album or not on the album. And then when it came out, there I am. So, you know, it was great to work with him, but it was like, wow, what he does though, which is pretty brilliant. He just lets each musician do their thing without a lot of, you know, sort of butting in or like telling them what's what. He just lets them do their thing. And then if it works, it works. If it didn't work, he would have erased it off the record and gotten someone else. But what I did worked for him. So, you know, that's also kind of a secret of producing in a way. It's, you know, get good people in and then let them do what they do.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, you see, now you brought something up too, and especially with your CD. Kelly and I were talking earlier, and she said, "Well, you know, do you think he'd know another guest that we had on a few weeks ago, Bobby Massano, because he's in the Blues Hall of Fame? You know, would he know Bobby?" And I said, "No, I don't think Grant would know him because Grant's more of a jazz guitarist, not blues." But then here you are pulling up this CD that's called blues, and so where do you see yourself in all of that? What, are you jazz? Are you blues? Are you rock? Or are you just all encompassing? Because you're, in my opinion, extremely talented and you could pull it all off.
I like to do a little of everything is the short answer. And this album, Blues, I spelled it Blooz because it's sort of my, you know, interpretation of blues, meaning it could have jazz album elements. It could be a little more traditional blues, but not all the way, you know, jazzy kind of blues thing. And it wasn't because I don't know how to spell the word blues, you know, but certainly I lean a little more towards the jazzy side. But, you know, I grew up like everyone else, you know, with a garage band and learning, you know, pop tunes and stuff like that. So I do pull from a lot of different kind of pops genres in a way, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's how music develops too, is by musicians like you who don't follow rules or a style, and you just kind of go with how you feel. And that's what I do. To me, I'm so not musical and wish I was. I'm so envious. It just all seems like magic to me. It just like, how do you come up with that? How do you, the music and the poetry and the, just put it all together, and then the different instruments, and it's just, and it's such a part of our life. I get frustrated that people, they want to defund the arts programs in schools and not put enough money towards it. And then how empty our music is with every occasion in our lives. It's everywhere. It's at the grocery store. I mean, how empty our lives would be without music. So I have great esteem. I've known quite a few. I have personal friends who are musicians. John's a musician. And I just have such high esteem for people who, some people don't make a career of it. They do it on the side or whatever. And there's a lot of talent in this world that goes unnoticed and unknown.
That's for sure. That's what I say when, the talent has to be there, but also a certain amount of luck, because you're absolutely right. Is a tremendous amount of talented people in the world, and you don't know about a lot of them,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
but thank goodness for the communities that they get to and entertain and, share their talent and their gifts with. But I do think music is just such an important part of our culture, of our lives, really in every culture. So
yeah,
anyway,
I agree.
That's why I get excited to talk to people who do music.
What's next, Grant? What's next?
That's
Well, wait a minute. Before we do that, after 2.5 Men, or maybe even during, there was Mike and Molly.
Yeah, we also did. Dennis Brown and I also co-wrote the music for the Mike and Molly TV show, which is Melissa McCarthy and Billy Gardell. And that was a super fun show because it was set in Chicago. So there was a lot of bluesy sort of acoustic guitar. All the transition cues were kind of bluesy stuff, which is always super fun.
Wow.
So that was a great show to do too. And we were on the set of that show, not as much as 2.5 Men, but they would have a choir singing or whatever, and so we would be on the set, and we did get to know that cast and crew a little bit as well. So that was a super fun show to do. And then we've also done specialty music. We've done some specialty songs for like Big Bang Theory. Some of the silly songs that they've done on that show.
Oh wow.
We were involved with.
And then Monk, it says on your sitcom Be Positive and Monk, you've been on those shows?
Monk was before I actually started composing for TV, but there's a friend of mine, great composer named Jeff Beal, and he wrote the theme song to the first season of Monk, which was like a sort of Django Reinhardt gypsy guitar kind of thing, and I played that. He asked me to play that, so that was and the funny thing about that show, Monk, that title, it wouldn't stick in my head because I guess I was envisioning like a Franciscan monk or something. So I couldn't put the thing together. So I had a couple friends go, "Hey, did you play on the theme for Monk?" And I go, "I don't know. I don't think so."
Oh, that's funny.
And so later I go, "Oh, that's what that was." Okay. Monk, I got it. Yes, that was me.
Okay. This is me. Just because he threw up the name Django Reinhardt, most people aren't going to know who Django Reinhardt.
Right. What's that?
I thought you had a pretty savvy audience, John.
Well, my portion of the audience isn't.
Okay, there you go.
Savvy.
Thank you. Okay,
so Django Reinhardt is a famous gypsy guitar player that from the kind of 40s and 50s, I guess you'd say. He played a lot with a violinist, another sort of gypsy violinist called Stefan Grappelli. And a virtuoso guitar player, very influential guitar player, played acoustic guitar.
But wasn't his thing where when he was young, he burnt his hands and he only could play with 2 fingers?
Two of his fingers were fused in a fire. So he only had 2 fingers, but he could play super fast. He just worked around it somehow.
Wow.
Yeah, he was amazing.
Very jazzy, and it was like, how can he be doing that with only 2 fingers? But he did it.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Okay, so next time you bring up an obscure name, I'll try to help out your audience, Kelly. There you go.
I think the rest of the show, we should just try to bring as many obscure names into the conversation as
I love it.
Give them some exposure. Well, I'm looking at the ones that I know of, and so I'm seeing Burt Bacharach. You worked with him.
I did work with Bert.
And how
By
was
the way,
that?
amazing. He was really something, super creative guy. I did the tour that they did after he and Elvis Costello did an album. They wrote an album together called Painted from Memory. And I did that tour. And Bert was just, hyper creative, always thinking about music, always thinking about how his own stuff could be better. And then getting to meet Elvis Costello was wonderful because he was not shy and he could, he was gregarious. So if you had 5 minutes with him, you could easily get him talking about working with Paul McCartney and stuff like that. So it's like, I am in heaven here, people,
Yeah, the Beatles again. Bring back the Beatles. And then you did say you worked with Brian Wilson, correct?
Well, not directly with Brian. I worked, Van Dyke Parks, who we mentioned before. They did an album together called Orange Crate Art, which is absolutely brilliant. Everyone should go check that out. Go stream it or something. But it's a co-album with Van Dyke Parks and Brian Wilson. Van Dyke wrote and arranged all the music, and Brian sang it. So, which was kind of the reverse in a way, although they wrote the Smile album, but it was just kind of probably Brian's thank you to Van Dyke for working with him on that thing. And it's a brilliant project and super fun. And I'm going to bring up another obscure name. That's where I met the wonderful bass player and a buddy of mine named Leland Sklar, who is another guy that's played with. It's easier to name if he hasn't played with.
Right.
Played with James Taylor, played with Carole King. I can't even start, just throw a name and I'll go, oh yeah, he played with them.
Right.
Wow.
And yeah, he is quite a fantastic bass player and has played with everybody.
Yep.
Wow. It's an amazing track record that you have and an amazing resume of musicians that you've worked with.
I got very lucky, John. I'm knock on wood. I keep saying luck has a lot to do with it, and I have my share of it, I think,
Yeah,
well,
and talent though. Grant.
Yeah, you've got to have the talent to back it up, or you might get lucky once, but you don't get lucky all the times you've gotten lucky. I wouldn't call it luck at that point.
Well, thank you for that.
Oh, yeah. And so, we've picked your brain about your career, and we know that you've worked in television and with all kinds of musicians and blues and jazz and rock. Do you have any words of wisdom for an up and coming musician?
Well, I mean, it's so different now. I do have, some advice, but I don't know if it all, translates to now because there's so many avenues, you could get your music online and whatever, but does that mean anyone ever hears it, So I don't know. But my thing was just to try to meet as many people as possible, play in as many different kinds of situations as possible. So I knew different styles. I actually took lessons right away on the guitar when I was a kid. So I could read music even from the start, which is not always important depending on what, genre you're working in. But for me, like as a session player, you have to be able to
essential,
Yep. So I got, I was fortunate in that way, but I don't know. To me, you should just, either find a little niche that's really your thing, just this little narrow lane and stay in that. That's one way to do it. Or be as broad as you possibly can and try to understand how all different types of music work and how they fit together, which is kind of more the way I took.
Yeah, and it goes to what's the word I'm looking for? Your palette of everything you've done shows that. Yeah. It shows that you didn't stick with one thing, and you have the ability to play, write, create, and perform in all of these genres of music. So let me get back to where I started before. What's next, Grant?
What's next? Well, that's a good question. The other thing, which I didn't include in my bio because it's a little off topic from, music, but I'm a big collector of like Mad Magazine and EC Comics, which are like essentially from the 50s, like Tales from the Crypt, Weird Science. They were the original publishers of Mad Magazine and Mad Comic Book and Vault of Horror and all that stuff. So I've actually written 5 books related to that subject. The most recent one is called The History of EC Comics, published by Taschen, which is a very high-end sort of coffee table book publisher. They publish books on probably anything you could name. They have a book on it. But The History of EC Comics books, the book that I wrote every word. I assembled the images, and it weighs 13 pounds.
Oh my.
It's 15 and a half inches high. And I'll lift it up.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Holy mackerel, Grant.
Can you open it up and let us just see a peek inside? Like something?
I'll open up this 13
Okay.
Pound.
Oh my gosh.
There's some of
Nice.
the war comics. Let's see.
Yeah. So
Now-
do you have to get like copyright permission for those pages, those
Yeah,
images?
I was just going to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Did you?
the publisher did all that.
Oh, great.
So they actually asked me to do this book, and they had already, worked out a deal with the estate of William M. Gaines. So I didn't have to do anything except write the book, which only took 3 years.
Wow, that's huge. Yeah.
You know?
That's great.
And
But that's also great art, too. There's great art.
Oh, these guys were tremendous. Like it was, at the time it was considered ephemera and even, bad for kids to read it. But these artists were just, among the best ever. And to give I'll give you an example. See if I can show you the scale. Here's a regular CD, and here's the book.
Yeah, you can tell it's big.
Yeah.
Really big.
Anyway, so I'm working with them on another project related to the same kind of stuff right now, and so I'll probably do more of that as time goes by. I don't like to get too bored, so.
Yeah, I'm just your life is just a bunch of fun. It
It
seems
is
like
kind of, it's a lot of work, but the stuff
Mhm.
I'm involved with, I think it's fun. So
Mhm. I think John and I relate to that. We're both creative people and always dabbling in projects. And, when I asked him to do this podcast with me, why do a podcast? Just, something creative, talking to people, putting something together, giving people a platform to share what they've done, because we both know so many talented people, and just keeps you out of trouble, I guess, keeps you busy.
and then, and related to this, I might as well mention, the Norman Rockwell Museum starting in about a week, they're mounting a big exhibition of Mad Magazine artwork. It's the Norman Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. And I'm loaning them 10 pieces of original art, Mad art from my collection. I'm not an artist at all. I'm a writer. I'm a historian with regard to that stuff, but I love the artwork. And so I'm loaning, 10 pieces of vintage Mad Magazine art to that. And we're going to go to the opening next week and stuff. It should be fun.
Yeah.
Oh, if you had given me a notice on that, I would have driven up to Massachusetts to see you.
Well, okay. It's going to be next week. I think it's June 8th. Next week.
Well,
it's a Thursday.
We'll talk between now and then.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. See if it can be arranged.
You can use a road trip.
Yeah. It's going to be an incredible. They have hundreds of pieces of Mad Magazine stuff from like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and you probably read Mad Magazine as a kid, John. Maybe I don't know if Kelly did. It's kind of more a guy thing
I know the character. I remember that guy, the character.
Yeah,
I remember
Alfred E.
seeing
Newman.
it.
Yeah. But, for people of our generation, John, Mad Magazine was so important. I mean, It kind of showed us that you could make fun of everything, including politicians and TV shows and movies. And,
It was a satire magazine, and it had no advertising in it.
Correct. That's right.
It had no advertising.
So it just relied on sales?
It survived solely on subscriptions and sales, and that was it. Had it not been for Mad Magazine, we never would have had things like National Lampoon magazine.
Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Live, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. Mad Magazine sort of showed those later creators that you can make fun of stuff. And you know, my gardener's outside. I hope you're not getting blown away by his lawnmower.
No,
that's
we
all
don't hear it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
But
Well-
okay. So anything else that's going on?
Yeah, that you
we
wanna
can talk
share?
about?
Oh, let's see. Well, I go to San Diego Comic-Con every year. It's like the biggest sort of comic convention, and I'm usually on a couple panels talking about this stuff that I just mentioned. So that happens in July. And then in New York, a couple weeks after the Norman Rockwell thing, I loaned some other pieces of Mad Magazine art to the Society of Illustrators, who they're doing a show on one of the Mad artists named Jack Davis, who kind of started in comics and then became probably the most published illustrator of the 60s and 70s. I mean, this guy did movie posters, Time magazine, TV guide covers, bubblegum cards, record albums, movie poster, whatever, like incredible career this guy had. So I'm loaning a few pieces for that show as well. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Grant, I mean, have you had any contact with Chris Carter after we got together?
Yeah, I bumped into him a few times at various things, and he's always very nice,
I'd like to get you back on a show with him. I'd like to get you on a Beatles show.
Next time you come out, I want to just go hang out in the studio and watch him do the show. I know you used to go and do that.
We used to do that all the time, yeah.
Yeah.
I need to get out to California again. Maybe when the weather changes here in beautiful New Jersey, here in the summer, when it starts to get into the winter, I just might consider it. So
yeah,
we could do that.
Come on
I
down.
know Chris would love to have you back on. You have great stories. So, and anything that goes on that you ever want to come back onto the show, on our show, we'd love to have you. You're a fantastic guest. You're an amazing talent, not just for what we do, but for America. You have done great things, performed great music that has much of it has become the soundtrack of our lives. Okay, it really has. From Feel So Good to just the basics. Feel So Good to 2.5 Men. People walk around humming those songs. And those, and you're part of that. You created that.
Yeah,
it's I've made a little tiny mark in pop culture, which is kind of amazing to me, really.
Yeah, not everyone gets to do that.
No, and we appreciate it greatly. So thank you on behalf.
Well,
of
and the other
America.
thing when we discussed what we wanted to talk about in this podcast, we said we hope to inspire people with our own stories and our guests. And I'm sure, somebody younger that will see this, maybe a musician, might be inspired by you and hearing your story and saying, wow, I want to work with someone like him, or write jingles or whatever they call them, the theme songs for TV shows, or play concerts, or whatever. So people inspire each other, and that's an important part of, especially with our youth, reaching out to our younger generation.
Definitely.
So someone like you who's had a very rich career, it's diverse, you have a great reputation as being a nice person, and then doing other
that
things
doesn't hurt,
too. It's important. People don't want to work with difficult people. They don't want to work with someone that's a jerk.
100%. And I kind of learned this lesson, like even you in music, there's sometimes difficult situations where it's stressful, it's tense, and it's sometimes easy to be negative. And I've been in that boat where I was like the negative guy, but I kind of learned, like, no, just try to be cool, be positive as best you can, and and power through. And that's always going to be the winning philosophy.
I always look at it as, we have a job to do here, and there are things going wrong, or somebody's upset or whatever, but let's try to help make everyone who is upset better, make it easier for them instead of making it worse by being negative. Or I think that's a good lesson for people to learn too. And I learned that lesson the hard way. I learned it from people who, when I was stressed out, people who came and had my back and, gave me that boost of confidence I needed at the moment or whatever. I learned from them, that meant so much to me in that moment that
Yeah.
I'm going to be that person for other people too. So I think that's
Positivity is always the winning formula,
Yeah.
that's really the bottom line. And if nothing else, is taken away from this little chat of ours, that would be the most important kind of lesson,
Yep. I agree with that.
Well, thank you.
Especially in
Thank you
creative
very much.
projects. I've done a lot of theater, and
Oh.
that's always fun. And really, and anything. I mean, I bartended in the nightclubs in Hollywood, and that was stressful because you're packed. You have a
Yeah.
packed bar, and everybody's staring at you wanting something, and that can be stressful. It seems silly, but it's very stressful. And I lost it. There were times when I'd lose it. I'd be yelling at all the customers even, and they'd listen. But you want to, you have to understand you've got a job to do, and you've got to get through it, no matter how hard it is.
Well,
So I
theater's very tough.
I have a question for you two. How do you two know each other?
Go ahead, Kelly.
We met from a mutual friend, Kimbra Westervelt, a lovely lady who we've both known for a long time. And Kimbra and I used to do a podcast together called In the Moment, Kelly and Kimbra in the Moment. And we just kind of ran out of ideas and guests, and it got stale for both of us. So we took a year off, and then I was missing it and she was missing it. But we're like, what do we do? Pick up and do what we already did. So she went off with someone else and is doing a podcast. And then I'm doing this with Jon. And then Kimbra and I put together a book ages ago called Tales of the Lioness. And it's 19 stories written by women who have overcome obstacles. And Kimbra had a story in the book. And then we asked Jon to do a little quote. And I think that was my first introduction to you. So we've just through the years, exchanged and done. And Jon was a guest on our show several times, Kelly and Kimbra.
Every time I put a book out, they'd have me on. So I was on several times. And
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. And he was always such a great guest. That's why I thought, and we've stayed in touch. And I said, hey, I think Jon and I could have some fun together doing a podcast. And here we are.
And here we are. The rest is history.
Yes.
that's what they say. So, so Grant, thank you so very much for everything you gave us today.
Thank you. Applause for you for all the things that I've missed that you've done, but I'm really glad that I got to meet you now and know
we got to educate Kelly on Klaus Vorman, and Tom Scott, and all these other people. Just so you know, and I didn't want to break into his conversation, but Hudson, what was the guy's first name?
Mark Hudson.
Mark Hudson was one of the Hudson brothers.
That's right.
Who had that TV show that tanked many, many years ago. It was like a summer replacement show or something. Yep. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't he who's Goldie Hawn's daughter or somebody?
Yeah, Kate Hudson and
that's the other brother.
The other one, Bill.
The other Bill. One of the other Hudson brothers. Yeah,
that's right.
They had didn't they have like a Saturday morning kids show or something for a while?
Hudson brothers.
They had a TV show. I don't know. I'm not sure, but they did albums and whatever.
It was a long time ago.
And Mark Hudson is a producer, and he produced quite a few and co-wrote songs for Ringo and produced his records for a long time. And
wow.
So there you go. Okay, now Kelly's all caught up.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Grant, thank you so much. And I'm not kidding. We're going to talk, and I'm going to try to get up to Massachusetts next week. See you.
Do it. All right. I love that.
Fun.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you so much, Grant, and all the best to you. And if you want to come back and talk about something anytime, let us know.
Let's do it. Great.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All views expressed in this video belong to Kelly Nicholson, Jon D'Amore, and guests. These discussions do not represent the opinions of any entity whatsoever with which they have been affiliated now or will be in the future. The opinions expressed are solely theirs, and since they are critically thinking human beings, these views are subject to change, subject to revision, and subject to rethinking at any time. These conversations are not meant to be taken as advice and are only for the purpose of entertainment. All statements may be based on hearsay and not necessarily valid proof of any claims in this video. It is not our intention to teach or advise on any topic. Unless otherwise noted, all photos are public domain. Thanks for watching A Slice of Life with Kelly and Jon.